Welcome to SeerCast, where founders and CEOs from the banking, payments, and fintech industry share their knowledge and expertise on solving real world problems. You'll receive tips and techniques on various topics that you can use right away, such as growing a startup, finding funding, bank fintech relationships, change in regulations, and so much more. I'm Adwait Joshi, and I'm founder and chief seer at Data Seers. So let's get started. So it's my immense pleasure to have Jeff Jonas, CEO and founder of Senzing. Welcome, Jeff, for this SeerCast episode. Where we're going to talk about you, the company, and entity resolution.
What? Who knows what entity resolution is? What are you talking about? What's this
I,
word?
I do, but I'm pretty sure most people don't. So why don't we start right there? Just tell us who you are, what does Senzing do, and let's jump right into entity resolution.
Well, let's start with entity resolution. That it has a lot of different words, so people know what this is, but it's about finding duplicates in data. Now, let's start with your phone. In your phone, you ever find duplicates in there? Like the first time you met somebody, you would put them in as Jeff. Later, you put them in as Jonas. Over here, it had an email. Over there, it had a cell phone. That's an entity resolution problem. But imagine this: you're the only curator of that. Imagine a bank that's got thousands of people entering data. They think you're three different customers. There's one particular hotel chain I show up at, and they go, "Which Jeff Jonas are you?" They tell me about three. I go, "I'm all three." They go, "Well, which one do you want to be today?" That's an entity resolution problem. In in healthcare, it's called patient record matching. Sometimes people just refer to this as master data management, knowing who's who. It's called link detection, fuzzy match, dedupe, hundreds of names. Anyway, it's recognizing when two records are related to the same person or the same company. And that's all we do is make this easy for developers. So they can just plug it into their product. So we don't build cars, we build transmissions. And developers use our product and just plug it in and they get entity resolution in 3 API calls. So we're a developer tool.
That makes a lot of sense. And where does it come into play for your clients, right? I mean, the use cases can be immense. I mean, I can think of every single industry. I mean, you just went from healthcare to cell phones to financial services. Obviously, there is more use cases for this. So, where do you see the biggest use of something like this?
A really big use case is bad guy hunting. Probably 75% of the people that use our technology are trying to find a few clever bad people. They're trying to keep, known bad people out, like a sanctions list, somebody they've already found doing money laundering. They want to keep them out of the ecosystem. Or they're trying to find, bad actors who are living in the data right now. And so that's the number one use case. The rest of our use case is what you would call customer 360. Maybe it's voting or deduplicating marketing lists or something like that. We got used an example here is we got used in the state of Utah for the clean slate law. They wipe felonies off records if they're not high quality felons. So 500,000 people were cleaned out of the felony list so they could have access to employment and voting. So that's an entity resolution problem. So it sits all over the place.
Interesting. We do a little bit of fraud analytics and fraud detection in our company as well. So this is very exciting for us. So, I mean, this is clearly not a new problem to solve, right? The problems have been there for a while. If you go to the big entities that are out there, like LexisNexis or Thomson Reuters or all these folks, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we got all of that, in-house, blah blah blah," because we have so much data, right? How do you talk, you know, how do you counter that back? Because like with everything, right, there is good, there is bad, and there is ugly. Just let's leave the ugly part out, right? There's good and bad, which means in an entity resolution, it's very black and white according to me, right? You either match that person or you don't. There isn't a middle ground here, right?
We actually put a little middle ground in there, and that's where we would say that our algorithms favor the false negatives, so only put them together if you're sure. But there is a class of records that you would call a possible match. You're like, we're pretty sure, but you probably need a little more information, whether you put a human on it or you get some other data to give you some certainty. But before you make any big decision, you might want to take a look.
Gotcha.
And then a second aspect of entity resolution, if you want to do it well, is understanding the relationships about who's related to who. If you can understand who's related to who, it helps you better decide who is who. I'll give you an example. George Foreman, the boxer,
Mhm.
named all five of his boys George.
Hmm.
Knowing that there's a family with five Georges plus the dad is helpful because later, if you get a George Foreman with a home address and a home phone, it could be six people.
Mhm.
So understanding the relationship graph. So the output of our work produces an entity resolved graph, who's who and who's related to who, and then it gets inserted inside of workflows. And so the reason why we work, I'll say side by side with those data aggregator companies like LexisNexis, is that they provide additional data. So a bank wants to take its data, find out who's who in its data without sending it all out.
Mhm.
And then they want to use that who's who, maybe add third-party data, whether it's corporate hierarchies, officers, directors, beneficial owners, and they want to combine that data. And then they want to do a really good job going, this person and that person are the same, even though they're using their middle name and change their date of birth.
Mhm.
And that's really about how to catch clever bad people. Clever bad people don't use the same name, address, and phone on every record. And so
Correct.
you can't do really sophisticated, what we would call entity-centric learning. You can't you only catch the idiots. And they don't matter because they run out of gas on the way to the operation.
And it's funny how much of fraud is like really stupid fraud, where, if you just looked for a certain amount of things, you'll get caught. And the more sophisticated things are the harder ones to catch. I mean, I can keep talking about this topic. It's one of my favorite topics forever. But before, we continue, I want to know, like, how did you come up with this, right? Like, nobody wakes up and goes to college and says, I want to start a business in entity resolution. So obviously this is a years of experience, maybe some pain points you encountered during the
Uh,
way, because that's most how companies start. So let's talk about that.
okay, I was originally in the custom software business. You needed software, we build you software. Okay? And people kept asking for these systems, and one of the components, one of the cogs in the wheel would be better matching. An early system in the 1980s was for TransUnion, and attached to TransUnion credit bureaus are collection agencies, and they don't want to call somebody five times and send them five notices. They just want to call them once and send one notice with all five debts. Well, you need debtor matching. So I didn't know that would become my life's work, okay? So I built a paperless collection system for TransUnion. It had debtor matching. Years later, I'm in Vegas, and they're trying to, they're like, look, we have 3,000 hotel rooms. I've got this list of people. If they get caught in our casinos, we're out of business. What the OFAC list is, Office of Foreign Asset Control list by Department of Treasury, is for banking. Gaming has a gaming regulator uh, 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 exclusionary list.
Hmm.
Like, if you're giving them money or they're in the house, you have a problem, okay? You're going to get fined or have your gaming license pulled. So now you got this list, and they've got all this data in all these different places, and they're trying to figure out, are these people on the exclusionary list in the house or coming? And that's an entity resolution problem. And when we built that system, it became known as NORA, non-obvious relationship awareness, because it started finding really interesting things humans would miss. And then we took a little bit of venture capital, including from LexisNexis, their venture capital firm, put money in us in 2003. And in 2005, we sold our fifth generation entity resolution engine to IBM.
Oh, nice.
And it was just it was a great journey. And IBM's got this great product called Identity Insight. It's my oldest daughter, okay? Like, she is beautiful. And so the whole team stayed together. And then in 2000 and oh man, what year? They bought the company in 2005. In 2009, I said, look, for $50 million, I'll build a sixth generation engine. People don't know how hard building entity resolution is, man. It's kind of like you meet some kids out over in Asia, and they're staring up at Everest and going, "I'm just going to head up there later today. It's going to take 3-4 weeks. I'm just going to get up there." They just don't realize that most of the people die. Most people
Hmm.
don't make it. It takes many more months. And so, anyway, I told IBM for 50 million, and so we started building it, and then we started building it in 2009. We started shipping it in 2012, and then in 2016, I proposed. I proposed a buyout of it to spin it out and partner and further invest in it outside. And so my Senzing company is more like a reincarnation than a startup. You see, it's got my team, average engineer on my team's been with us 20 years. This is all we do. We just have a new birthday and a new name, Senzing.
That's there we go. So now you can entity resolve that, right? Saying, well, this is the same company, technically.
Kind of the same company, yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
funny. Sometimes you come across an idea, and the idea is so big that, and I've seen this happen many times where people will start a company, sell it, and then they go away for 2, 3 years because they have a non-compete, come back and do it again, and then sell it, and then go away 2, 3 years and come back and do it again. I'm like, wait, you just exactly the same thing 3 times, and all 3 times you made money. That's fascinating. But that tells you that some of these areas in technology, in banking, in this case, name resolution, are so untapped that even if you make a small improvement, that's like Netflix saying, if you make a 0.1% improvement in our algorithm, we'll pay you $1 million, right? Because that small improvement is such huge in this industry because you're never going to be 100%. So the goal is not to become 100%. The goal is to get as close to perfection as you can, knowing very well that you'll never reach there.
that is totally true. By the way, that reminds me this from a long time ago. I think the CEO of Goldman Sachs said every um, millisecond they gain in their trading programs makes them 100 million a year. Some quote like that. Like that's, the value of being incremental.
Oh yeah.
In the entity resolution space, it's so fractured. The really top end products you can't get for under $1 million. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to commoditize or democratize it so the algorithms that would normally only be affordable to the elite can be scaled down and downloaded and used for free by a nonprofit, for example, or run it and it's starting at $4,000 a year. So we're just trying to make it accessible so everyone can have the best stuff. We're just talking about record matching.
That makes a lot of sense. Of course, I can't help but think that there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of ML involved in what you do. For me and for most of the industry and the world, to be honest, in 2023, everything changed, right? With the introduction of the
Oh
large
yeah,
language models such as
yeah,
ChatGPT. And
yeah.
everybody thinks that, oh, I got ChatGPT, it's going to solve all the problems, right? So, this is an interesting problem to solve. Many people would think that, oh, I can just give it to large language models or already trained models that Google and some of the other folks are offering now. But there is a tremendous amount of experience that comes in, curation that comes in. So, how do you see today's AI? How does it affect you? Does it help you? Does it hurt you? Are you guys completely neutral, saying we are
Yeah.
so unique?
It is a beautiful, I'll call it peanut butter and jelly or chocolate and peanut butter combination. People talk about how the large language models hallucinate, but that's as if you ever expected them to be truth tellers. They're not truth tellers. They're qualitative. They ask them about recipes and ask them about how to, what's the best way to talk to my friend about this difficult topic. Those are great ways to use it. Trying to get truth out of it, that's not its purpose because they're generative. And so what we are with LLMs is an antipsychotic on who's who. Funny story, the first time I got a real personal taste of ChatGPT, one of my teammates went to ChatGPT and asked about Jeff Jonas and Iron Man. And it came back and said, I met John Favreau, the filmmaker of Iron Man, in a think tank in Vegas in 2008. Um, and I inspired because of my work in data science and bad guy hunting, I inspired the character Jarvis. I'm reading this. I didn't know it was from ChatGPT. Okay, it's on our Slack channel. I'm like, I sit in think tanks. I go to think tanks in Vegas. I meet filmmakers. Like, did this happen? It's so plausible. I have to reach out to some of these think tanks. I'm like, hey, was John Favreau the Iron Man person there? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, it still might have happened. I think I'm going crazy. Then I asked ChatGPT myself, and then it goes, I inspired the whole series, not just Jarvis.
Ah,
I'm like, this is incredible. It conflated me, the Iron Man triathlete. Well, I asked ChatGPT. It goes, it's widely known. Jeff Jonas even said this in his own blog post, me in quotes. I asked for a link. The link doesn't exist. The quote doesn't exist. It's generative. So the connection between the two, and in fact, we announced conversational AI for entity resolution, where you can now talk to entity data. Instead of search for Jeff, tab, Jonas, because I just tabbed over middle name, June 22, my date of birth, right? Instead of all of that, um, you could just say Jeff Jonas, June 22nd. And then why did these records come together and get a human explanation? That's the qualitative way to use a large language model around entity data. And it's the utility, the use case. This is going to change the world, what's
Oh
happening
yeah.
right now.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. So belated happy birthday. You're June 22nd. My
Yeah.
grandmother was June 22nd. I'm June 23rd. My grandfather was June 24th. My father is June 29th. So talk about June babies. And we are all A Joshis too, by the way. So everybody's name starts with an A, and of course Joshi. So that's a interesting entity resolution. Did I make a typo? And was it supposed to
Mhm.
be 22 versus 23rd, or what's going on here? So this is so much fun. So, of course, we've been doing this for 20 years. Accidentally
Mhm.
stumbled upon it. That's, a lot of stories. Like, hey, I just found this and thought we should pursue this. And here
Yeah.
you are on the, I think you said sixth generation of
Mhm.
this type of work, and it's now called Senzing, right? Cool
Yeah.
name. How did you pick the name? Does it mean anything to you? Does it mean anything to the industry? Because, branding is everything, right? We called ourselves data seers because our goal was we wanted to see through the data. And what
Mhm.
that meant was do predictive, prescriptive analytics through data, different types. We had not defined what that meant, what industry, of course, financial services was going to be what we were going to focus on. But that's how we came up with the name, right? But everybody's name has a story behind it. Nobody wakes up these days. I mean, Nora, by the way, was a cool name. I'll tell you a funny story. I wanted to start a restaurant, and here in Atlanta, which I actually did, and we were trying to figure out what was the name. Like, I'm a huge fan of kebabs, and we wanted to make some, like international kebabs, right? And so somebody came up with and said, you could you should name it International House of Kebabs, but reverse it, Kohi, right? So it's just like random name, like nobody has it, and it's kind of catchy, right? So it's funny how people come up with it, and then all these money spent, and then sometimes you get truest. And I'm like, okay, what happened here, right? SunTrust and BB&T became truest. Like a lot of people had an issue with that name when it came out. Now nobody cares. So I'm curious about your story and the name of the company story.
I wanted the name Sense Making,
Ah,
and I found somebody that owned it that was going to sell it to me for 35,000. I
okay.
put 35,000 in an escrow, and then they decided to change their mind.
How?
I was sitting up on my laptop in bed, working, being depressed. Girlfriend at the time saw my depression. I'm like, "Oh, I wanted that name so bad. And she goes, "Hey, how about this? GoDaddy, Senzing, like sensing, sensing, but Senzing, $9."
There you go.
Boom.
Yeah. $29,991 saved, right? Or 34,999.
Better than that, a key thing about building businesses and names is you want a name that's easy to say.
Mhm.
It needs to roll off the tongue. It should be distinctive when you search for it. It should be one or two syllables if you can. You should be able to see it and say it. You should be able to hear it and spell it.
Yep. Yep, and that is a great thing. I went through a similar exercise. Of course, DataSeers was available, and I tried to trademark it, so we were
Mhm.
successful. And then we created the financial services product, called it Financier. And here came the challenge of trademarking it. This lady called herself Financier back in the day, but the website had gone away, and there was nothing there. But sure, the moment you start filing a trademark, everybody wakes up and says, I want this. You can't have it. And so we had to go back and forth, and we agreed upon saying, listen, I'm focused on software, I'm focused on AI, I'm focused on this, and you call yourself a financier because you help people. And luckily for us, those kind of financiers were thrown in jail and they died, suicide. So I was like, I'm glad that I am not that kind of financier. We are a software that sees financial data, even spelt differently, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's always fun when it comes to names. I mean, every single company that I've started, I've sat there like for a while and said, what should it be? It should be something simple. People need to understand what you're doing just from the name, right? And then use that for marketing. So one of the things you said earlier is you raised some money before, you had a company where you were a software development shop. So assuming that you just started that out of nowhere. So you have seen both sides of the coin. You have seen starting a company with bootstrap funds, no capital. You have started a company with external capital. Tell us a little bit about, because I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners, viewers in today's day and age are kind of on a fence, right? Where do I raise money? Do I not raise money? A lot of people are announcing their rounds a year later because they took a down round. They didn't want to announce it, so they were like, "Oh, here we go." So, what is your take on funding, VCs, and the whole process?
Well, I'll start by saying I have my own money. I'm an LP in four funds, a limited partner. I've angel funded five companies,
Hmm.
sit on some boards, and I help little startups. I do up-down mentoring. So some organizations that are doing 100 million to $1 billion a month in revenue, down to people who have a current job who want to get out and become a CEO. I spend time on all ends of the spectrum, chatting and learning. So it's a space I'm super interested in. I think, rule one is people want to give you money if they can figure out how they're going to get it out. If you're not aligned around helping them get their money out, then you have a misalignment. The later you can wait to raise money, the better, because sure, you could have an idea and sell 90% of your company for $1, right? Or you can wait and prove to you have a product market fit where the market's responding really well to your product. And if you can get to product market fit before you've taken any money. By the way, there's a stat called net revenue retention.
Mhm.
And that, just for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's a basket of customers, say December to December. And over that period of time, did they grow in their subscription use or shrink in their subscription use? And that's net revenue retention. And anything over 120%, meaning your business just grows at 20%, is world class. And that's the best metric to show product market fit. If you lose 90% or 80% of your business sticks and you lose 20%, you have a bunch of holes in your bucket. It's very difficult to fill it. It's hard to raise money.
Mhm.
But if you can get your net revenue retention and have some historical data and show you're sitting over 100% of NRR, then you're going to get a nice valuation. You're going to, yeah, that's better. And I see a lot of companies, I see a lot of CEOs spend all their time raising money and not executing.
Mhm.
And then what happens is you predict this, and then you're spending all your time raising money, not executing it. So you're really getting, you're really going to get this, and the investors notice. And so this is coming down, your valuation's getting down, and then you end up where you got 90 days of runway left. So rule one is don't run out of money.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, right? Last 2 years, or rather 2020, 2021, part of 2022 too, I would say, um, when market was running rampant and rabid in many ways, people were getting 100x, 200x on their revenue. I mean, folks went public at a valuation which was unrealistic, right? These are companies that have never made money. They have negative EBITDA year over year and have 16, 20, 30 billion dollars of valuation. And then what happens, right? 2022 happens and everybody comes to realization that this is reality now. Let's talk about P to E ratio, which these guys have never heard of because they have never made money. So there is no profits, right? And they're just focused on growing the top line revenue. And of course, with all these banks that went kaput and interest rates going up, a lot has changed in the market of raising money. I often post out there saying that, what is the one metric that you look at, right? Is it number of employees? Is it the top line revenue? Is it the number of clients, right? And that whole land grab market, like get as many clients as you can so that, I don't care about 30, 40% clients can churn and I don't care about them. I care about the other 60% because that's still higher than most of my companies.
Mhm.
Suddenly is not working. And a lot of people are now realizing that that's actually hurting them more and they're forced to do down rounds and circus tricks is what I call them. because then they come up with some things that, that's going to give them the next round of money. And we haven't raised anything, right? We have grown organically, very cautiously. So somebody might look at us and say, well, you didn't grow 100x from year one to year two. And I said, no. And I didn't want to either because, have you ever been in a plane that climbs vertically or descends, vertically? It's very dangerous and it's very scary for most people to do that, right? But when it's climbing at a consistent pace, you can be, and my idol here in Atlanta, living in Atlanta, was somebody like a MailChimp. Nobody knew who they were at first. Then they started the freemium model. Then they grew and sold the company for $16 billion. Never raised a penny. Two founders, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's like the ultimate story. Of course, we see all of it, but this was great. And that's why we continue to be bootstrapped, right? It's because I've heard too many horror stories, right? I'm not saying all VCs are bad, but there are good ones, there are bad ones, and there are really bad ones. A friend of mine is going to write a book on his really, really bad experience with certain investors and what he went through. So I was like, wow, that's great. That's very interesting. So, a lot of fun stuff here: data, AI, entity resolution, funding. So let's say you had to start all over again, and be an entrepreneur again, maybe doing this a seventh time, would you do it? And what would you do different?
It is really fun building companies. To go back for a minute is in the 2000s, I was still building my company. I finally got a product. I was the CEO. I went to lunch with somebody one day. I just met them and I was listening to them chat with me. And I went, wow, that's a real CEO. I'm not a CEO. And so I hypnotized them and uh, I talked them and I gave them the little piece of the company. And I hired a CEO to run the company. I demoted myself to chief scientist. So I got back to programming, or I was still programming then. I gave up programming, but I was still doing architecture and doing technical work and writing patents and things. And that was fun. This is the first business where I'm actually enjoying the Rubik's Cube of business design. If we change our price like this, it'll change support like that, which will change this. Wow, the green square is completely in the wrong spot. That's horrible. So it's a very integrated system model. So I am enjoying that. So yeah, sure, I would go start another thing. Um, Lessons learned. I'll tell you, I don't, as a CEO, I don't. You find CEOs that are technical background that end up with a little bit of weakness on sales and marketing, or you find a sales and marketing CEO that's a little, weak on the technical side, right? I'm something. I'm strong on the technical side. We have a product that is like people love it. This thing is like fantastic. I've got no engineering obligations for any existing contract or future thing in the pipe. None. No legal obligations to change in my code. We're just making it perform better on cloud compute, so it's lower cost of goods for them to run 100 million or billion record system on an AWS. But my weakness is I didn't come through the sales and marketing side. And so, how to invoke top of funnel and that. So that's, you know, shoring up on that myself personally, where I could have better vision about how how to, now and then I have put some guardrails on my marketing team, but I don't know better. So I
Hmm.
give guardrails. I'll tell you one of them, okay? I'm just against junk email. I just think it's criminal.
It
I think
is.
that people are willing to send 100,000 emails out and waste 100,000 people's time to get 10 responses is
Oh yeah.
antisocial.
That's the entire industry though. They throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. And people call me on my cell phone. That's like my biggest pet peeve. Like they're working with my team and the team's trying to buy something from them. They find my cell phone number somewhere and they keep calling me and say, "Hey, this is blah blah blah." I'm like, "Do I know you?" Like I don't even think that I know you. We haven't even. Oh
Oh,
yeah, I was working with your team. I'm like, okay, but you're calling the CEO. I have no idea what's going on.
I just think that that's really big. I think if the whole world did that, the world would be a much worse place, right? Because you and I are trying to get higher and higher quality spam filters.
Hmm.
I still have to look through my spam filter because there's some really good stuff hidden in there. Okay. So the amount of time I have to spend every day. Anyway, that's an example. I have guardrails. I'm like, no, we're not doing junk email. We need to figure out some other way.
Hmm.
And so we're doing a lot of experiments right now. But I guess your question is what would I do next? And I would know more about. I would listen maybe more to my sales and marketing team. I would be more in a learning mode on that front.
Got it. Well, let me ask you this. You said you were in this company, you are truly a CEO, you're playing with the Rubik's Cube. Do you still write code?
No,
You have not written code in
I,
this company. Is that what you're promising me right now?
I've never. I do have a fantasy that's secret that I'm gonna, start, getting some hands on some Python coding, but it's not happening anytime soon. I'll have to get another. It's somewhere in this current journey on my company. At some number of ARR, I'll probably install I'll say a real CEO, but a CEO that would know how to take us from 100 to
Yep.
500
I,
million.
I feel the same way, by the way, and I'm 100% technology junkie, data scientist is what I think I really am. Of course, I started the company, so had the CEO seat. I do know sales and marketing and building, but I will tell you this: the last time I wrote code was 5 minutes before I got onto this call because I just love it.
I'm
I'm just
jealous.
writing POC code that we have 65 developers. Why do I need to write code? Because I'm just showing them, hey, this is possible. You could try something like this, and here you go, right? And and
Mhm.
and they take it, and then they take it further. So that addiction is for me is just the worst. Like I have to get my hands on code. So no matter where I go, I have my Visual Code ready. All my app libraries are installed, whether it's Python, whether it's doing something in Go, whether it's JavaScript. I'm writing. I don't care what language it is. I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to write some code. So one last topic of conversation today before we call it a day. What do you do outside of business? Tell us a fun thing about you that you like to do, because of course everybody has a personality, and this is one of the things that I've realized is when you meet people, they tell you, "Hey, I'm the CEO of this and this company." Most people don't remember them, but then you say, "Hey, I used to be a professional rower," and then everybody's like, "Oh, that guy that used to be a professional rower." And so I always ask people, what is it that is one thing that defines you outside of work that people may or may not know about you?
It's a twofer. One is when I was 23 years old, I was a quadriplegic
Oh.
from a car crash.
Hmm.
And do you know what an Ironman triathlon consists of?
No, I don't.
Swim, bike, run. It's
Okay.
a race. You
Okay.
swim 2.4 miles.
Okay.
You
But
pedal
that's a
up.
normal triathlon. So why Ironman triathlon?
Ironman's the name of a brand.
Oh, got it.
And they're shorter triathlons. So a full distance triathlon is a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a 26.2-mile marathon. Okay. I've done 76 of these.
Whoa.
And at the moment, there are three people in the world that have done all of them.
Hmm.
One German, one Mexican, and one American.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Now that is cool. I have done zero. I just probably would watch it on a TV and say, no, not for me.
It's pretty boring it's hard to watch sometimes. It's pretty slow motion. Unless it's like the championships, where you're rooting for somebody. My friends come to the race course to watch me. It's just brutal for them. That it's about as hard for them to watch it for a day as it is to do it. But anyway, in my spare time, I did 7 last year and I got 2 scheduled this year.
Wow. Does it get easier as you go, or is it pretty much the same? Is it just get second nature? Like you get up and drink coffee, you get up and do a triathlon.
Pretty much most of the year round, I'm within a week or two of 5 weeks max of being ready to do an Ironman.
Wow. Wow. Is there a number that you're trying to reach, like highest Ironman triathlons ever done by a person, world record or
No,
something?
that number's like 270, man. There's no
Wow.
John Ragg,
270.
270. He's around
Wow.
270. His name's John Ragg. It's phenomenal. He's a good friend of mine. No, I'm just trying to do all the ones that every time they name a new race, I go do it.
Nice. Nice. So that's a fun thing. I will tell you this. I might attempt to do it someday, but it's just too much for me. I'm not a big runner. I'm not a big swimmer. I'm not a big biker. So that just really makes it super hard for me to do any of
Hmm.
this. I do like to lift, but that's about it. I don't do any other things. But this has been a
Wait,
phenomenal,
wait,
yeah.
wait. What's your question? What would be the thing to you? What's your answer to that?
Funny. So I am a professional musician. I learned music before I learned, any formal language. So my parents initiated me into Indian classical music, and I was doing Indian hand drums, percussions.
Hmm.
From there, I learned vocal music. Then I learned how to play piano. I
Hmm.
taught myself how to play bamboo flute. I also repair about 20 different instruments because there is not enough people around to repair them. So I just figured out a way to do this, and I actually have a largest nonprofit in the world that is about all of this work that I'm doing. So someday my goal is to actually get a PhD in ethnomusicology because music is something that will never leave me, right? Everything else can leave me, but I feel like even in my last breath, like I had a medical procedure done today, right? I was having an MRI done, and the magnet started, making sounds, and the first thing goes into my mind is beats, and my hands and my feet start moving exactly, and so that's how much I have beats in me, right? And so that is what my unique thing. Most people, who know me, of course, know this about me, but that's basically what it is. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that MRI sound as having had a broken neck and having had my neck looked at from time to time.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's interesting. So
Wow. So you heard the music in it.
I know. I mean,
You could,
it's random things, right? It's like I know that my shower fan is it's at 440 hertz, right?
I
That's
was
the
just
first
gonna
thing I
say, was it
realized.
440? That's an A.
Yeah, that's an A because
That
it's like
hang
it's
out.
right there. So I'm like, oh, there you go. So anyway, so all of these things,
Wow.
kind of come together. Hence my love for data. Hence my love for data science because music is a lot of data and data science and
Mhm.
experimentation. So this has been a phenomenal conversation. Please check out the work that these guys are doing. It's fundamentally important in financial services. It is also important in many other, like Jeff said, healthcare, traditional payments, banking, insurance, even court records, and all of that. So sky's the limit. So go check them out, give us a shout out, and if you want to be on this podcast, send us an email. Thank you.